So how are the religions represented in Dragon Age tied to the histories of the communities that they represent, I guess is the question. This is something that I think they represent incredibly well. You can sense a certain timelessness, for example, in the Dwarven religion. There doesn't seem to have been a ton of change. It's not, you don't get a sense that there's a very dynamic religious history there. And that's partially because the dwarves stay separate. They have sort of separated themselves. They live underground. They don't spend a lot of time in contact. And in fact, it's part of their cultural traditions not to come into contact with the other civilizations. They stay where they are. And so their religion has stayed more or less the way it is. You can see a lot more dynamism in the elven traditions and in the human traditions, because you have a lot more interplay between those civilizations over the course of history. So with the elven religion, for example, you get the sense that this is probably the oldest religion on offer. Part of the reason that the elven stories are able to incorporate other stories in the universe is because it's older. It's been around for a while. It's seen the rise of these other stories, and it's tried to make sense of those other stories in light of its own story. So it's this, as is the case with a lot of really old, sort of polytheistic, somewhat animistic religious traditions. It tends to be somewhat syncretistic. That is, it tries to incorporate the aspects of all these different religious traditions into itself and account for them in light of its own story. So you can see a lot of that kind of dynamism. Andrasteism, the sort of religion of the Chantry, the culture of Andraste, is really fascinating because it is a newer tradition. It is significantly younger than any of the other religions that we see on offer, and it is the direct result of a certain sequence of historical events. And this is going to get us in some political stuff, which we can talk about in a minute. And the cult of Andraste rose up when a revolutionary war hero, effectively a sort of insurgent against the power of the empire, was put to death for her insurgency. And she claimed a certain kind of chosenness. She claimed a certain kind of power given to her by the Maker that overrode the powers of all the other old gods and overrode the powers of the Tevinter mages. And it was a cult that arose around this particular historical figure who claimed a certain kind of divine inspiration that grew into what became a much bigger, much more powerful religious tradition that, because of its alliances with certain forms of political power, first in Orlais and then later in Tevinter, Imperium were able to sort of extend a significant amount of influence over the other religious traditions.